this particular website. Okay, if I look at the spy and I try to investigate anything, spy will give you properties of everything. For example, okay, that's good. Yeah. For example, this is an image. Okay, this is an image, and you click on that, you'll get the hierarchy, browser, page, and image. Right? So spy will tell you everything. Okay, it's like the eye of QTP. It tells you how QTP is looking at your page. Fine. Now what happens when you record your script? Okay, to understand that you need to understand the object classification. Okay, now every object you look at, for example, link, it's got a property called class name is link. Every object has a class. For example, the class we studied, the class for the button is web button. The class for link is link. Class for text field is web edit. Fine. For example, this thing over here, this is a web edit, the search box. Okay. If I scroll down, I'll get lot of objects. This text over here, text generally falls under a category called web element. Okay, web element is just not for text, it can hold lot of other things as well, but the text, it generally falls under the category of web element. Fine. So there are various class names associated in QTP. Okay, and every object is associated to that class. For example, in case of radio buttons, the class will be web radio group and all. Okay, and the classes, they differ for Windows as well as web-based applications. For example, I open QTP, I open the calculator. Fine. If I spy the calculator and just a minute. One minute. Right. If I spy this and I move my mouse over any button, then I see that the hierarchy is different. The first window out here is of the type window and then win button. Okay. So both of these are class names. Win button is the class which categorizes the button 9, and window is the outer window. Okay, it categorizes the window of the calculator. Similarly, this text field out here is a win edit. It's not a web edit. Web edit is for the web-based applications. So every object is categorized into various classes. Okay, and when you record the script, okay, what I'll do is I'll create a new test. Okay. When you record the script, all these objects and their classifications, they go inside the memory of QTP. And the memory of QTP is known as the object repository. This is the icon. This small yellow, green and red drum. If you click on this, you'll see a window like this coming up. Fine, this window is the object repository window. Fine, and if you start recording, fine, I'll click on the record button, move window a little bit aside, maximize the browser, hold on. I'll just resize it. Fine. So suppose if I am on bbc.com, okay, and I go and click on the link out here called say any link, for example BSc Sensex. Okay, I click on it, so you will see that in the repository three things get added. One is the browser BBC homepage, under that there is a page BBC homepage, and under that this is a link. Everything has a class. The class out here is link. Fine, and these are the various properties and all of the link. I'll talk about these. Fine, so just be with me. Now what is this thing so slow? Yeah, just a minute. Right, and suppose in this page I search for a company, say Infosys, and I click on the go button. Just a minute. Wait a minute, let me make a new test. I'll start recording. Open a browser. Go to bbc.com. You see that the Mozilla browser and a blank Mozilla page, it gets added into the object repository. Now when you go to your website, when the website opens up, you can click on any link in the website, say Typhoon Kills 77. So everything, whatever you do, okay, it gets added onto the object repository. Okay. Similarly, for a Windows based application, this example will be more clear if you look at the Windows based application. Okay, so if suppose I open up the calculator and I open up repository, when you make a new test, the old repository is lost. Okay, the new repository takes its place. Fine. So when you start recording, and suppose I click on 7, so you see that the button 7, it gets added in the repository, then 4, then 5, then 2, then 1. So all these buttons will be added in the repository, and you will be able to map everything from the code. For example, the parent window for all the buttons is the calculator window. Now the calculator window has the class called as window. Okay, this class is also visible when you spy calculator. If I spy the calculator, then you will see that this window on the top, okay, this is the calculator window. Fine. Under it you have the Win button 7. So similarly over here, this is the window calculator, and under it you have got so many buttons which you clicked on. So while recording, only those objects they come in the memory of QTP, or only those objects will come in the, you can say, in the object repository which have been interacted with, right? If you click on an object or if you work on an object, only then that particular object comes inside the memory of QTP. Alright, and you can map it with the code as well. For example, this is the calculator window. So the code says that window calculator, that means these are the classes, the ones which are not in double quotes are the classes. So when you write Windows calculator, this means that there is a window class object in the repository. So QTP goes in the repository, checks which is the object of the window class. This is the one, okay, whose name is calculator. So the name is out here, the name calculator dot activate. So what this will do is activate means it was actually minimized on my browser, it will maximize it. Okay, activate command, it actually maximizes. Now after that it writes the next line window calculator. That means there's a window, there's an object of the window class in the repository whose name is calculator, right? Dot win button 7. That means there's a object in the repository inside the calculator win button type whose name is 7. Dot click means fire the command, click on it. Okay. Now what if I change this 7 to some other, like if I write SEVEN and hit enter, it gets changed in the repository and also it gets changed in the code. This is actually your own name, the user defined name. You can name it anything. Okay, but do not fiddle with the description properties of the object. Do not change this 7. This 7 actually signifies the property of the button, that is 7 is written on the button. The text of the button is 7. Okay, so you have to be little bit careful. Okay, and you have to be a little bit, you can say, you have to be very cautious while changing the object properties. Don't change the description properties or the visual relation, any of these. You can give your any local name to it. For example, the calculator, I like to call it CALC. I change the name, hit enter, it gets changed over here as well, it gets changed in the code as well. So we don't tend to change the description properties or something because these are the ones which are coming over from actual SPI. You can change the external object properties. That will work. Okay? That's okay, right? Now, similarly with Windows-based applications as well. Alright? Suppose if I make a new test and I just a minute. Start recording and I go to the website gmail.com. Man, I guess my net is slow. Alright. If you're not able to hear me, please let me know. I'll do something about it. Right. Now, once you are on Gmail, okay, you tend to write something in the username field and you tend to write something in the password field. Okay. So what happens is this is the code which gets recorded. And if you open up your repository, the object repository, you'll see a window like this. Fine. And there under it there are two pages. One was the BBC page, one is the Gmail page, both got recorded. Now when you expand this Gmail page, you'll see that email ID and passwords are two other objects under the Gmail field, which are of the class web. Fine. Now if you look at the code carefully, then this is the browser. The name is BBC News, Typhoon and all. What I'll do is I'll change the name of the browser. I'll name my browser as Mozilla. So what happens is as soon as I change and hit the enter, in the code as well it changes to Mozilla. Fine. Browser.page, BBC News and all .sync, that means let the page completely load. Okay, sync commands, it tells you let the page completely load. After that I navigate to gmail.com. I set the username to this and I set the password. Fine. If you look at the hierarchy carefully, then suppose this line. This line says that in the repository there will be a browser class object whose name will be Mozilla. This is the browser class object whose name is Mozilla. Inside it there is a page class object whose name is Gmail email from Google. This is the page class object. And inside it there is a web edit whose name is email, and this is the web edit whose name is email. Dot set. Set is a command. Okay. This is used to set the value of that particular. Okay. So now about the password, if you look at it carefully, then the password has been encrypted automatically, and it has been the encrypted value you can store it. The encrypted value is present out here. If you want to manually, if you don't want to encrypt your password, for example, you can delete it and you can use the normal set command and you can put anything in it. It will not be encrypted. Or if you want to manually encrypt your password, fine. In that case, we have in your QTP. If you go to all programs QTP, you will get under tools, you will get something known as password encoder. Okay, you open up this password encoder and you type in anything and click on generate. This will encode the password which you can use it. You cannot decode the password. Okay, out here you will not be able to decode it. You can only encode your passwords. Right? So this is how you can decode, or sorry, this is how you can encode the password through password encoding. The decoding happens at runtime. QTP does all the decoding. Okay. Now the flow is clear, right? That is, you have objects inside objects, and every object has some class and all associated with it, and you will get used to it. You'll get used to the classes and all associated with the objects, everything. Fine. Now, is it like that every time you have to record and run to add the objects in repository or something? Okay, it's not like that. Okay, first of all, there are few things which you can do in object repository very easily. For example, this is an email field. Okay, it's got 3 properties associated with it. On the basis of these 3 description properties, this email field is recognized. If you want to remove this field from here, you can remove it. You can click on the cross icon out here and this field will be removed. If you want to add another property to it to identify this, you can click on the plus icon. You can select the additional property which you want to incorporate to identify this particular element. For example, I would like to incorporate the height. Height is 32. Okay, so you can remove or add the description properties for a particular object, and you can remove the object itself. You can click on the delete button, the object will go away from the memory. Right? You can, suppose if I don't have this code and I need to generate the code for writing into the email field. So you can drag this field on the code and the code will be generated. So you can write in the email, set some email ID. Okay, and in the password, this is the password field. If you drag this here, then set the password. Okay, so you have email, you have passwords which are being set. Fine, and hold on. Right. So you can drag drop the objects in the application, and when you drag drop them, the code gets automatically generated. Right. Now I'll talk about this command over here, sync. I'll talk about it later on, but first let me go into the object repository in a little bit depth. Okay. Now what exactly object repository is? It's like a database. What is happening out here is that when you run the script, okay, this is the script which I made, this is the object repository, and this is the application. The script, or let's modify a little bit. This is my script, this is my object repository, and this is my application. What script does is that it reads the objects from the object repository, and it also stores the objects in the object repository. And then when does it store it? It stores recording during the recording process. When you run the script, what happens? The script takes up the object from the object repository and then finds the object in the application and then utilizes that object. Okay. Now, object repository, as I told, is like a database. If you have a huge application having tens and thousands of pages and all and lots of objects, then maintaining object repository is also a headache. The object repository size, it actually becomes very big. So in those scenarios, what we do is that we do not work with object repositories at time. We have got simply two things. We have our script in those cases, and we have the application. The script without object repository will go in the application and it will test it. This concept we'll study later on. This is advanced QTP, VB scripting, descriptive programming and all. So we bypass the object repository from there when you use the descriptive programming and all. This makes our work easy, because the bigger the object repository, the more time it will take to actually read the objects from it. It's like a database. If you write select star from table, and if the table is having 10 million lines in it, then the stuff is going to hang. It's going to take a lot of time. Right? Similar cases with object repository. What I have heard is, I have also not experienced, frankly, because I never work with repository. If the size of the repository goes above 2 MB, fine, in size it becomes more than 2 MB, then you face issues. Okay, you face issues. Now, how do you find the size of the object repository? I just told you, if the size of the object repository becomes greater than 2 MB, then you face issues. To get the size of the object repository, you can actually save this repository on the hard disk. Right? You can do one thing, that is, 1 minute. You can actually go to File, Export Local Objects, click on this, and maybe I'll save it on the desktop as temp. So it will be shared as a .tsr file, and if you look at it, this is the one. So this is how you can store the object repository in your hard disk. Okay. Now if the size of this file goes above 2 MB, then that's what I have heard, that it becomes tough for QTP to recognize the objects, or the script takes time, basically, not tough, but the script takes a lot of time to execute. Right. So now let's do